But on the ground today, communities in southern Israel once again under seemingly relentless fire. NBC News captured this video of rockets over the town of Ashkelon, just a few miles away in Gaza, near total darkness as the sole power plant there has run out of fuel. Israel has been amassing soldiers near the border. A military spokesman warns that the fighting will only intensify going forward and that the scenes coming out of the Gaza Strip will be, quote, difficult to understand and cope with. Now, ahead of a potentially wider and more devastating stage of war, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the leading opposition leader Benny Gantz have announced the formation of an emergency government intended to unite the country and put it on a wartime footing. That comes even as on the ground, everyday Israelis are coming to grips with the heinous nature and scope of the terror attack that has taken place, inflicting horrors that many thought they'd never see, or at least ones that they thought had been confined to history. Here's what one soldier tells NBC News.
It's something that I never saw in my life. It's something that we used to imagine as our grandfather and grandmother in the pogrom in Europe and other places.
Complicating Israel's war efforts, the harrowing hostage situation. At least 150 men, women, children have been kidnapped by Hamas. Hamas is threatening to execute them one by one in response to any action by Israel. As the New York Times reports, quote, there is no recent precedent for the scale of the hostage situation in the Gaza Strip. No modern government, not even the world's most brutal, like those in Russia or North Korea, has used hostages in this way as human shields under threat of public execution. It is a reminder of why both the U.S. government and the European Union categorize Hamas as a terrorist organization. Our colleague Lester Holt spoke to the family of a mother and daughter believed to have been kidnapped by Hamas.
What do you want your sister and your niece to know right now?
I want them to know that we're doing everything in our power to bring them back. We do not forget them. We do everything we can in the States, in Israel. We're very worried about them. We love you. And we want to hug you. And we want you back home.
What I would say to the Hamas, all what I want my daughter and my granddaughter back. I beg of every official there, think of them as if they are your daughter and your granddaughter. What you have feel if it happened to them at all. I'm only a mother, grandmother.
We'll get a live report from on the ground from our correspondent in Israel in just a couple minutes. But joining us now, Admiral James Stavridis, NBC News chief international analyst and the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO and counterterrorism expert and a former Israeli government spokesperson. Retired IDF Colonel Miri Eisin is here. Miri, let me start with you. Is it clear to you that a complete assessment of everything that took place beginning Saturday morning has happened, or is the situation ongoing?
The situation is ongoing. We're talking about a terror massacring organization, Hamas, that I, as a counterterrorism expert, myself changed in that sense on October 7th to remind myself of what they do. This was pre-planned, very extensive, combined use of a lot of different, very basic capabilities, including things that we haven't really been talking until now, that taking the soldiers that they had massacred and then wearing the uniforms. And those are the kind of things that can still be ongoing. We don't have the exact number of how many of these terrorist operatives came into Israel. We've killed thousands in Israel. We don't know how many more are still there. They're popping up. They're still trying to do actions, both in infiltration. So it's not over yet. It's still ongoing. And a lot of the communities that are adjacent to the Gaza Strip itself, we're talking about towns and villages and kibbutzim and moshavim, all of the people are not there. So this is still totally ongoing.
Can you tell me what you just alluded to, that one of the tactics deployed to render some of these towns and villages defenseless was to slaughter and target the military first? Can you say more about that?
I think it's what we would call combined effort. I'm talking about a terror organization. That combined effort is that they came in and attacked both the soldiers and the dozens of civilian communities at the same time. With the soldiers, part of that pre-planning is to not only mutilate, torture in a barbaric manner, but to take the vehicles and the uniforms to be able to continue to use that, and also to be able to be the ones that when the reinforcements came in, they came in and saw soldiers, and those soldiers were Hamas terrorists who butchered them as well. One of the
I think pieces of the horror is the graphic nature of the terror attack. And obviously in this country, we have a single moment. It was a morning, right? September 11th happened in one very confined period of time in 3 very specific locations. This has a different nature to it, that it was in some ways slow motion, face-to-face terrorism, staring at a child, staring at a mother, staring at a soldier, staring at a grandmother, taking people who suffered from chronic diseases. Can you just speak to whether, as a counterterrorism expert, there's anything about the brutality of the terror attack that surprised you?
It's what we saw with ISIS. And until October 7th in the morning, as an expert, I was always saying, Hamas is different. It's not ISIS. And I've changed. I learned I was wrong. On October 7th, I woke up and understood that all of the tactics, everything that we've talked about when it comes to ISIS, we have seen in these last few days. Maybe they've upped their game. How sarcastic can I be? But in that sense that they live stream it already, that it's in TikTok, that it's with these joyous aspects, and it's all done to be online, to show themselves they are proud of what they've done, and they will continue to do so. Those live images, and you mentioned this before, I don't even want to think about what they are going to do with the hostage situation in social media.
Admiral Stavridis, let's turn to that. The reporting in the New York Times that I read from, the unprecedented nature of the hostages as human shields. How does Israel deal with that?
Well, let's begin by recognizing the professionalism and the competence of the Israeli military, particularly in hostage situations. Look, that's baked into the DNA of Israel, going back to 1972, the response in Munich, Entebbe, one of the most remarkable and successful hostage rescues conducted ever. The Israelis know how to do this. Having said that, Nicolle, I can't imagine a harder location to try and pull this off. The scale of it, 150 hostages, undoubtedly by now scattered throughout the incredibly packed Gaza. The Israelis not knowing exactly where it is, and then couple that with what is a necessary incursion into Gaza by main force military. And adjacent to that, your special forces are going to have to do everything they can to find, fix, and rescue these hostages. Again, I can't think of a harder challenge. If anybody can pull it off, it would be the high-end forces of the IDF. Let me close with this. Almost certainly there are Americans in the mix, and I know the administration, the president, Lloyd Austin, our Secretary of Defense, Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, they are focused like lasers on those hostages because the Americans are in the mix and because our closest allies and friends, the Israelis, are there. So the entire resources of U.S. Special Forces, and we are very good at this as well, will be available if needed.
Admiral Stavridis, before we pull the thread too far forward, I wonder if I can use your expertise to just go back to Saturday morning a little bit. What will we be trying to learn from the brutality that we've discussed, the hostage taking that we are now aware of, the social media tactics that you're talking about, and the ability to surprise Israel and America and the world. How does that change whatever they're planning to do next?
First and foremost, as the colonel correctly pointed out, these individuals are barbarians, but they are smart barbarians. And they have been watching not only the Islamic State, but many other actors, including special forces of our own countries. And they have adapted those tactics, everything from hang gliders, paragliders, all of the deception tricks you talked about a moment ago. So that will get pulled apart, analyzed, fed back so we can reverse engineer it and kill it the next time it appears in front of us. Secondly, just as the United States had to face its intelligence failures after 9/11, I know Israel will face those failures in a forthright, direct manner. Israelis are nothing if not direct and capable of self-criticism. They will pull apart what happened, everything from tactical failures and communications between stations, elements, commands, organizations. And just like the United States after 9/11, they will remodel, readapt, and improve coming out of this. I'll close with this, Nicolle. At this moment, this is not the time to be overanalyzing what happened. This is the time to go forward, find and kill Hamas in Gaza.